Hey everybody, so today we're starting on 2.5 and this will be a like a 2-day lesson. Today we're starting with the literal equations and formulas. So would you please get your notes set up? The essential question, how do you write and use literal equations and formulas? So as we go through this, we've been solving equations for several days, and today we're going to take some that have all letters, possibly there might be some constants in there, and we're going to solve them just so that they are solved for a different variable. All right, so here's what I want you to write down first. Literal equations contain two or more variables. Make sure you get that written down, and then go back in and highlight or circle what is the vocabulary word right there. It's the literal equations. All right. Then the second thing, a formula is an algebraic expression that relates two or more quantities. You can use a formula to describe one quantity in terms of the others. Again, at any point in time, you just pause if I'm going too fast. So we've got an example here. Area equals length times width. That is if you're doing a rectangle, a square, anything that has four right angles. All right, so that's four-sided. So area equals length times width, but this right now is solved for A, and they say solve for W. And sometimes people think, oh my gosh, this is going to be tougher. No, not if you know all of the steps. If we're going to solve for W, I'm going to highlight that. All right. For me, when I started, and even still, I like to highlight what I'm going for. So if you ask me for help during class, I would go grab a marker and highlight or write the letter that I'm solving for in a different color, just because that helps my brain to stay organized. As with any equation we solved before, let's just draw a line down and then it's okay. So I look at the W and I say, okay, what is being done to the W? Well, it's being multiplied by L. How do you undo multiply by L? Well, you divide by it. So what this says then is, in order to find the width, I would just take the area divided by the length. Does that make sense? Yeah, you've been doing that in your head for years. So sometimes we just get concerned because it's all variables and no letters. I can't come up with no numbers. I can't come up with a number answer, and that's totally fine. You're not gonna today. So width is area divided by length. Well, let's look over here. Area also equals pi r squared. And you might say, well, how can it equal two different things? Oh, well, this is for a circle, right? So I'm gonna put a line down and I'm gonna say, let's solve for r. So I'm gonna highlight my r, and there's something you might notice about that first. Now, as I'm solving, I go backwards. So if I were to make a do-undo chart here, I would do r squared first, and then I would times by pi. Now, if I'm undoing it, I go back up, so I have to undo the pi first. Well, what's the opposite of multiplying by pi? You got it, dividing by pi. So I write that in. You should not be writing 3.14, nuh-uh. We're just keeping the pi in here. Then, so I've got the area divided by pi equals r squared. So do you remember, how do you undo that r squared? You square root it. So I write this, square root, square root. There you go. So r equals the square root of the area over pi. Is that pretty? No, but it doesn't have to be pretty. It's just what you would do if you were trying to figure out, if you had to go backwards to the radius. You do the area divided by pi, and then you would square root it. So today, when you come into class tomorrow, I'm going to have you try a couple of those. Then these. Solve for y, meaning rewrite the equation so it is in function form. Write this down because there's a vocabulary right there too. that you will see often. You need to know, what does it mean to be in function form, because that's exactly how they'll ask you. And what that means is you get y by itself. So if you want to make a little thought to yourself, get y by itself. That's your goal. So we're going to do a couple. I'll walk through them all and you can choose. Do you want to pause right now and try them all by yourself? Do you want to listen to one? That's why these notes are for you. You do it the way you would like to. First thing, as always, I'm going to draw a line down the middle to keep myself organized, and I highly recommend you do that. If I want to get y by itself, I look next to it, what's happening to it? Well, I've got this 5x happening to it, but there's no sign in front of it. What's happening? Got it. That's adding, because if there's no sign, we assume it's positive. All right, so now I minus 5x, minus 5x. Now, something you need to know about function form is this. Drop down my y. The x has to come first. Okay? So, x first. So it will look like this. Maybe you remember. Y equals something x plus something. Do you remember what we put in there? Y equals m, or the slope, plus b. So this x part should always go in the front. Technically, could 9 minus 5x work? Yes, but I want you to put the x's first, just because it's good practice. All right, so I'm going to keep going. You choose if you want to pause it or not. All right, I want the y by itself. So how do I undo this? Plus 2x, plus 2x, and drop that down. So y equals 2x plus 5. Last one. Ooh, this one is not nearly as pretty. I want to get the y by itself. So what do I have to undo first? I undo this, what's kind of tagged on. So it's a positive 3y. So I subtract, or positive 3x, sorry. I subtract my 3x minus 3x. So I drop my 5 down, so I've got 5y equals negative 3x plus 10, because it's a positive 10. Now, this 5, we've got to deal with that. I divide by 5, and distributive property says it has to go through everything. So I'm just going to write it under everything. If that's true, I get 1y left. And over here I get negative 3/5 x plus 2. There we go. Now, solve for y, then find the value of y when x equals negative 2, 0, and 3. I'm pretty confident you can do that. Here we go. Hey, stuff is not on the right side right now. How about this? What do you want to do? There's several ways. Is it all right with you if I move the 2y over to here because I like that better? How do I move the minus 2y? Plus 2y. So now I've got 2y plus 13 equals 2x. All right, now what do I have to do? Get rid of that 13, minus 13, minus 13. Can I do 2x minus 13? Technically, no. I just got 2x minus 13. I leave them next to each other. Then divide by 2. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So therefore y equals 2 over 2 is just 1x minus 13 halves. Let's just leave it as 13 halves. So now this says over here, when x is negative 2, 0, and 3. So what do you do with that? Well, this negative 2, we're going to plug it in right there. So y equals negative 2, because it's 1 times negative 2, minus 13 halves. Now, just to be nice, I'm going to make that into 6 1/2. Negative 2, negative 6 1/2, negative 8 1/2, so that I can graph it. Could I have left it as negative 17 halves? Yep, but for graphing, it's going to be nicer. 0. If I plug 0 into here, I get negative 13 halves. Just for ease of graphing, I'm going to do negative 6 1/2. Then, if I plug 3 into there, 3 minus 6.5. So I have $3. I want to spend 6.5. I'm at negative 3.5. Does that make sense? If not, let's talk about it during class. You just need to make sure you bring it up. So this last one, try it on your own, and I'll come back to you in a second. All right, so I got y equals positive 1x plus 8. I think you might have gotten all negative signs because you're like, oh, I got to negative y. Yeah, you can't do that. You have to move the negative out. You have to get positive y by itself. So if this is negative, I can just positive. It just flips the sign of everything else, which in this case makes it all positive. Negative 2 plus 8 is 6. 0 plus 8 is 8. 3 plus 8 is 11. So there you go. I'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you write down any questions you have, and we'll talk later.